Hi, everyone. I'm Vladimir Dutit. We are watching all the news happening in the United States and around the world. If it is coming into us from these monitors that you see behind me, which are feeds from all of our stations and affiliates across the country, we're going to bring it to you live right here. This is CBS News 24/7. Vice President Harris will take center stage tonight as she formally accepts her party's nomination for president during the final night of the Democratic National Convention, what we know about her speech, and a recap of the fiery speeches from last night. Former President Donald Trump heads to the border today as he tries to draw attention away from the DNC and highlight immigration. We'll go to the southern border for a preview of his remarks. And freight trains from Canada's two main railway companies came to a grinding halt this morning over contract disputes, and the stoppage could upend supply chains right here in the United States. We're going to break that down for you in just a little bit, but we begin this morning with the curtain, which will come down on the Democratic National Convention tonight. The highlight, of course, of the final day will be when Vice President Kamala Harris officially accepts the 2024 Democratic presidential nomination. Last night, her running mate, Minnesota Governor Tim Walz, took to the stage to accept his nomination for Veep. And there were more speeches from Democratic leaders such as former President Bill Clinton and celebrities like Oprah Winfrey. Watch.
In 2024, we got a pretty clear choice, it seems to me. Kamala Harris for the people, and the other guy who's proved even more than the first go-around that he's about me, myself, and I.
I know that Vice President Harris is ready to take us to new heights.
Soon and very soon, we're going to be teaching our daughters and sons about how this child of an Indian mother and a Jamaican father, two idealistic, energetic immigrants, how this child grew up to become the 47th president of the United States.
It's the honor of my life to accept your nomination for Vice President of the United States. It's the fourth quarter. We're down a field goal, but we're on offense and we've got the ball. We're driving down the field. And boy, do we have the right team. Kamala Harris is tough. Kamala Harris is experienced, and Kamala Harris is ready.
All right, joining me now with the very latest on this convention is CBS News campaign reporter Nydia Cavazos. Nydia, so we heard a little bit of Governor Walz's speech in the clip, but I wanted to play another part for our viewers. Watch.
So there I was, a 40-something high school teacher with little kids, zero political experience, and no money, running in a deep red district. But you know what? Never underestimate a public school teacher. Never.
So, Nydia, describe the reaction that you've been hearing to Governor Walz's speech. The contrast has been made between, this is the old political adage, well, who would you want to have a beer with, right? But there are a lot of people who are Democrats right now who are saying, Tim Walz is the kind of guy that I would just want to hang out with. What are you hearing?
Well, good morning, Vlad. This is definitely something that we keep hearing on the trail as we've been covering him and Vice President Harris on the trail. And also for many people who were here attending the convention last night, they say this is, their grandfather. This is Governor Tim Walz, who they can relate to. And Governor Walz yesterday had a very strong speech, but above all, a very emotional message. And this is something that we could see among the crowd. They were visibly emotional reacting to his speech. They were crying, and we saw it from his family as well, reacting to the message. And all of this is because Governor Tim Walz was able to deliver many personal details about his story, about his upbringing. But one of those stories that he also shared that has been trending all across social media platforms is when he tells the story of how his first daughter was born, Hope. And this is, of course, after many failed attempts with fertility treatments. And when they were finally successful, they, in fact, named their daughter Hope. And, of course, this is a message intended to communicate that they've been through struggles, and this is why they're fighting for certain things such as reproductive rights. But above all, what we continue to hear from many in the crowd is the association with the middle class with Governor Tim Walz. And he's been effective in delivering this message that because of his upbringing, because how he's been able to, be successful from going from a high school teacher to now potentially becoming the vice president of the United States, his message and his intent is to communicate that because he comes from the middle class himself, he can relate and therefore he can better serve the American people.
There were some other really electric speeches, if you listen to the Democrats recapping them this morning, including from former President Bill Clinton. We played a little bit of that. And, of course, megastar Oprah Winfrey. And she talked about something that I think is sort of interesting. She said that decency is on the ballot. May have lost Nydia, I think. Can you hear us, Nydia? All right. We're probably having...
I can hear you now.
Okay, sorry.
Yes, I can hear. So one of the main messages that we heard last night was a focus on joy. And like you mentioned, Oprah Winfrey specifically touched on this. She urged voters to choose joy in November. And of course, this was a central message that we saw among the audience and among the many speakers that were here last night. We even saw it from Governor Tim Walz's son. And this was a perfect expression that wrapped up the night as his father was speaking and he was listening to him. He got up at one moment and he was crying, he was in tears, and he said, "That's my dad, that's my dad," and he kept saying it over and over again. And of course, this all speaks to the momentum and the feelings associated with last night. And as Oprah Winfrey best said it, she said, "Choose joy in November."
All right. That was an incredibly emotional moment when Governor Walz's son stood up and said, "That's my dad." Nydia, thank you very much for your reporting. I appreciate it. All right. Some of the speakers at the DNC last night addressed the issue of immigration, and that has been widely viewed as a major political vulnerability for Vice President Harris. Here's what some of them had to say.
The border is broken. But this year, when Democrats and Republicans worked together to finally write new border laws, we were blocked. We all know who sabotaged us.
Trump killed that bill, and he did it because he knew that if we fixed the border, he'd lose his ability to divide us.
When Donald Trump comes down to Texas, stands next to officers in uniforms just like mine, he's not there to help us. Don't think that, not for a second. He is a self-serving man.
CBS News immigration and politics reporter Camila Montoya Galvez joins me now to talk about this. So that was an interesting point that was made yesterday, Camilo, and you know this issue better than anybody at CBS News. The point that was made about the former president blocking bipartisan legislation that would have helped fix the border because he knew that if that wasn't a talking point this time around as we get closer to the election, that it might be detrimental to his campaign. Can you just remind our viewers what that legislation would have done and why the president ultimately and how he was able to convince members of his party to kill it?
Good morning, Vlad. Yes, that legislation was brokered by the White House and 3 senators in Congress, 1 Republican, 1 Democrat, and 1 independent. And that legislation would have dramatically changed and overhauled U.S. border policy and also asylum procedures. It would have given the president, Vlad, a sweeping power to shut down asylum processing when illegal crossings soar to a particular level. It would have also expedited the processing of asylum claims and made it harder for migrants to be able to get asylum. It would have also boosted the ranks of Border Patrol agents, asylum officers, and immigration judges. And these are all measures and proposals, Vlad, that, as you know, have been supported by Republicans and immigration hawks for years, if not decades. And this is why Democrats and now Vice President Harris are arguing that the only reason that former President Donald Trump convince Republicans in Congress to reject this deal and to scuttle it was because of political reasons, because he felt that that legislation, if enacted, would have solved some of the issues here along the U.S.-Mexico border and undermine his chances to attack then candidate President Biden, now Vice President Harris, on the campaign trail on the issue of immigration, which we know is one of the worst polling issues for the Biden-Harris administration and a major political challenge for Democrats. But now Democrats, Vlad, can actually point to the fact that illegal crossings here have plummeted to a record low not seen in years. Right now, illegal border crossings are at the lowest level since September of 2020, nearly 4 years ago during the Trump administration. And this massive drop is being fueled by an executive action, Vlad, that President Biden issued to severely curtail access to asylum, the sweltering summer temperatures here, and also Mexico's efforts to stop migrants along the U.S.-Mexico border. But again, former President Trump is coming here to try to focus on an issue that he made central to his 2016 campaign and that he is hoping will again catapult him to the White House.
So it's interesting, Camilo, you point out, and we showed that graphic that showed the border crossings are down significantly from January of this year to about, which was at a high of 250,000 to now where it's about 56,000. But the question that I think, and this is sort of speculation, but you've talked to members of Congress, you've talked to people on the ground in some of these border states. Should Kamala Harris and Tim Walz win this election and you remove the Trump factor from the equation, then there isn't anything stopping Republicans and Democrats from coming together to fix an issue that every president, going back to George W. Bush, has said needs to be addressed. It's not just Republicans that have said issues at the border need to be addressed. Democrats have said it as well, including President Obama, even going back to President Clinton, who spoke last night at the convention. So I'm just wondering if it would probably be easier to grease a deal once you remove the Trump factor out of the equation.
I think so, Vlad, because it is absolutely true that this system, the immigration system here in the U.S., is desperately in need of reform. The last time U.S. border policy was updated by Congress was in 1996. The last time the legal immigration system was updated by Congress was in 1990, over 3 decades ago. And so this system is outdated, understaffed, and can become easily overwhelmed when there is a sharp increase in migration. And because of this congressional inaction, Vlad, multiple presidents, Republican and Democrat alike, have had to enact Band-Aid measures, if you will, stopgap measures to address the crisis here. But those measures, Vlad, as you know, are susceptible to being struck down in court, and they're also susceptible to being terminated by a president with different views on this issue, which is likely if former President Trump is elected in 2025. So, yes, I think if you remove former President Trump and others from the equation, it is easier for some Republicans to accept proposals that they have long supported at the border.
Yeah, interesting. Camilo, as always, thank you, my friend. Appreciate it. Okay, Republican vice presidential nominee J.D. Vance is hitting back at Democrats. Yesterday, he spoke to CBS Evening News anchor and managing editor Norah O'Donnell, and she asked him about Trump's black jobs comment and Michelle Obama's response. Here's what he had to say.
I think we should elect our president not based on skin color, but on merit and on who's going to do the best job. What I really dislike about a lot of the rhetoric coming out of the Democratic convention is, on the one hand, you see speakers say that they believe in unity. On the other hand, they're attacking Donald Trump and the people who voted for him. They're saying that Donald Trump dislikes people because of skin color, when in reality, Donald Trump dislikes Kamala Harris's policies because those policies have led to a lot of suffering.
All right, that was J.D. Vance responding to Norah O'Donnell. We were going to bring in CBS News Philadelphia meteorologist Grant Gilmore. I don't know if Grant's there with a look at the national forecast. There he is. What's up, Grant?
Hey, good morning, Vlad. Good morning. Yeah, just actually looking at some really interesting stuff that we'll talk about a little later on throughout the newscast here. But I do want to start off in the south because it is exceptionally hot once again. Temperatures starting the day in the middle and upper 80s. In fact, Phoenix right now near 90 degrees. So really warm start to the day. But again, that's just the par for the course across especially the southern plains. Look at some of these forecast high temperatures today. San Angelo, 110. The record is 105 degrees. San Antonio, 108. Record 103. You go down the list, just breaking records once again. The good news, though, as we go through the next couple of days, the heat will begin to relax. Now, still very nice weather across the Great Lakes states into the Mid-South, going into portions of the Carolinas. Still cooler than normal, though that begins to change across the Northeast. We've still got monsoonal thunderstorms back into portions of the Great Basin into the South and West. But, and again, this is what we'll talk about. We're looking at temperatures dropping nearly 30 degrees cooler than normal as we go into the next couple of days across portions of the West and the Pacific Northwest. Not just cooler than normal, Vlad, but talking about maybe the first flakes of the season, that being snowflakes. So we're going from triple-digit temperatures to snow in portions of California. We'll show you that forecast here in just a little bit, but for now, back to you.
Say it ain't so. Not ready, Grant. Not ready. Yikes. All right. We'll check in with you a little bit later. Thanks, man. Okay. To other news now. This morning, another body was recovered at the site of the sunken yacht off the coast of Italy. The latest details just ahead. You're streaming CBS News 24/7. Canadian freight railroads are shut down, dealing a potential blow to North America's economy. Thousands of workers are locked out after a failed late-night negotiation. The shutdown could disrupt operations in a number of U.S. industries. National Political Global News reporter Mackenzie Gray has been following this situation between the labor union, and he joins me now from Ottawa. So, Mackenzie, 75% of Canada's exports come into the United States. Tell us which products will be impacted and how long could Americans expect to see these products out of stock?
Well, there's a ton of them, Vlad, and it could be a while before this deal is settled. The union and CP and CNKC have said that they are very far apart on these issues. Issues around scheduling, safety, forced relocation programs are all on the table right now, things that are not really moving quickly by the admission of both sides in this situation. And that means that key goods across the board that come to the U.S. from Canada could be in danger. Oil, timber, coal, a big one too, and of course agricultural goods that get shared. And it's not just things coming from Canada down to the U.S., it's also goods that the Americans move through Canada. Governor Tim Walz of Minnesota might actually have to take his eye off the campaign because Minnesota agricultural products go through Canada to get to ports. Major issues across the board in pretty much every sector of the Canadian and U.S. economy.
Yeah, and I'm also guessing that it's not just Americans who are going to be affected by the inability to access these goods, but it's also going to be the people who sell those goods and who have those goods exported from Canada to the United States. In many instances, small businesses. And as you are well aware, the trade associations have been demanding that the government and President Trudeau himself step in. Is that in the cards?
Well, at this point, it doesn't seem like it. The Liberals are definitely a pro-union party, and we heard from the Prime Minister yesterday saying a deal needs to be done at the table. Here's what he had to say.
My message is very straightforward. It is in the best interest of both sides to continue doing the hard work at the table to find a negotiated resolution. Millions of Canadians, of workers, of farmers, of businesses right across the country are counting on both sides to do the work and get to a resolution.
Yeah.
The federal government does have the power to be able to end this stoppage. Sorry, Vlad. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. Sorry.
No, the federal government, just important to note, does have the power to end this stoppage. They could force binding arbitration, something they've rejected, or they could recall Parliament to pass back-to-work legislation. That's what the U.S. Chamber of Commerce has called for. It doesn't look like that's going to happen right now, but there is interest from the White House. Pete Buttigieg, before he had his speech at the DNC yesterday, called the Canadian Minister of Transport. The Labour secretaries are speaking later today. Clearly interest from the White House in making sure that this strike does not go on longer than it needs. Lockout, I should say.
All right, Mackenzie, and let me just apologize to my Canadian brothers and to you. Of course, you have a prime minister, not a president. Clueless American over here who's been up since 4 o'clock in the morning. You know, you're not surprised that we're clueless down here. So appreciate your understanding. Thanks, Mackenzie. Talk to you soon.
All good, Vlad. Nope.
Thank you. All right, serious story now. Divers at the wreck of a sunken super yacht have now recovered the bodies of 5 passengers off the coast of Sicily. One other person is still missing. British tech billionaire Mike Lynch was one of the victims whose body was recovered. BBC News foreign correspondent Bethany Bell joins me now to talk about this. Bethany, the tragic news, of course, for the families who were hoping beyond hope that some of their loved ones would be rescued. The grim news. What are you hearing now on the efforts to recover that final missing person?
Well, we've just seen some boats which have been circling the site of the shipwreck just a little bit out to sea behind me. They've just returned to the harbour. We've seen divers in their bright orange diving suits. They've been continuing their very painstaking work, descending down 164 feet or so, 50 meters to the seabed to try to comb through the yacht to see if they can find the final missing person. We've also seen helicopters flying overhead. And this morning we had that fifth body brought up from the wreck. It was put in an ambulance. It's been taken, like the others, to mortuaries. And that's where the formal process of identification is underway, and also autopsies. And we also know that an investigation has been launched by the Italian authorities. They've been questioning the captain of the yacht. And they will be continuing, we understand, for a number of weeks, if not months, their work into trying to find out, establish how this incident happened.
All right, Bethany, thank you very much for your reporting. We appreciate it. Okay, parents, listen up. There is a new study out about baby food sold across the U.S. in supermarkets, and it is raising concerns about what's really in those products. We've got the details coming up next. You're streaming CBS News 24/7. Here are some of the top stories we're following this morning for you. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. could end his presidential bid as early as tomorrow, according to sources to CBS News. His campaign says the independent candidate will speak Friday in Arizona about his path forward, but he has not yet said what that will be. This week, Kennedy's running mate discussed the possibility of suspending their campaign and joining forces with Donald Trump. RFK Jr. previously tried to contact Vice President Harris about serving in her administration. Taylor Swift is commenting for the first time on a thwarted terror attack that led to the cancellation of 3 concerts in Vienna earlier this month. Swift said she waited to speak about what happened until the European leg of her Eras tour ended to prioritize safety. Yesterday on Instagram, she wrote, "Having our Vienna shows canceled was devastating. The reason for the cancellations filled me with a new sense of fear and a tremendous amount of guilt because so many people had planned on coming to those shows." New research found that most baby food sold in the United States is packed with far too much sugar and salt for babies, according to the study from the George Institute of Global Health published in the peer-reviewed journal Nutrients. 60% of baby foods on U.S. supermarket shelves are unhealthy and do not meet nutritional standards set by the World Health Organization. The study also found a quarter of the products contain hidden sweeteners, and nearly all of the products have misleading messaging. The study did not disclose the specific brand names or the brands of those baby foods. Okay, turning back now to our top story. It is the 4th and the final day of the Democratic National Convention, and last night the crowd heard impassioned speeches about uniting the country from Democratic leaders and celebrities like Senator Amy Klobuchar and poet and activist Amanda Gorman. Tonight, Vice President Kamala Harris will formally accept the 2024 presidential nomination, and we're learning more about what Harris will say in her speech. So joining me now with the very latest is CBS News Minnesota reporter Caroline Cummings. Caroline, good to see you. So as we've been indicating, the Vice President will take to the center stage. What are you hearing about what she might have to say?
Well, good morning, Vlad. So this is going to be a little bit of an introduction of Kamala Harris, right? I think is lost on us as reporters who cover this often that there are Americans at home who don't know much about her yet. Remember, it was just a month ago when Joe Biden said that he was going to drop out of the race and not seek another term as president. So she will talk about her background as a prosecutor, the former Attorney General of the state of California, and how those experiences made her into who she is today. And as she has said throughout this campaign, and actually a little callback to her 2020 presidential campaign in that primary, that she will prosecute the case against former President Donald Trump. So expect to hear her talk about that record and how it will make her a good candidate in the White House should she be elected. And she's also going to really hone in on contrasting her vision for the future with that of former President Donald Trump. So it is her big night tonight, and there was a lot of excitement from delegates last night for Governor Tim Walz's speech, and I'm sure that excitement will very much be present tonight for tonight's events. And the lights are dimming because they are really getting ready to do a little rehearsal for tonight's events, Vlad.
Oh, very cool. So after this convention wraps up, Caroline, what are you hearing is next for the campaign? Because one of the things that I think people have a little bit of PTSD over, especially if you are a Democrat, is the energy and the excitement that was centered around former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton's campaign for the presidency back in 2016 was such that they perhaps felt that they didn't have to put as much effort into campaigning in some of those battleground states, like, for example, your state, Minnesota, like, for example, Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin. And so I wonder, what are you hearing from the campaign about what their plan of attack in terms of rallies and events is going to be until Election Day?
Well, Vlad, you've already seen Harris and Walz, since her announcement of Governor Walz as her running mate, really zero in on those battleground states. I mean, before coming to this DNC, they had a bus tour around Pennsylvania. They actually spent night 2 of the Democratic National Convention, not here, but up north in Wisconsin, a key battleground state. So expect to see them continue to focus on those battleground states, which you and I know are going to be the places where this race is really fought and won. But to your point about being complacent, it's actually something that former President Barack Obama really touched on in his speech the other night. He said, you know, this is really great, Democrats. Everybody is excited in this room about what's going on. But, you know, basically you can't take your foot off the gas if you really want to win in November. So he said that this race will be tight, and he reminded everybody in the room of that fact, and polls bear that out. So it just will be one of those things where the Harris-Walz campaign will really try to make sure that they can get their message out to voters. And likewise, you'll see that from the Trump-Vance campaign, too. I mean, they have been in battleground states this week as well. So I would expect to see both campaigns really kind of pedal to the metal, if you will, because 75 days till Election Day, Vlad. Can you believe it?
75 days, Caroline. I actually can, because it's been a long 4 years. Thank you very much, Caroline. Yes. Good to see you. We'll talk to you again tomorrow. All right. More than 2,000 protesters showed up for a pro-Palestinian rally near the DNC in Chicago yesterday. CBS News national correspondent Roxana Saberi has been capturing all the action and joins me now. As you know, Roxana, the city has one of the largest Palestinian communities in the country. You know, I think, Roxana, you give me a sense of what you've been able to experience and report from on the ground. Leading up to this convention, there were countless pieces sort of suggesting that what we might see would sort of mimic what we saw back in 1968. We really haven't seen that. I mean, there have been protests, but even 2,000 doesn't sound like a lot compared to what perhaps we were expecting. But what you tell me, what have you seen?
Yeah, Vlad, I mean, organizers had various estimates leading up to the DNC. I think they were expecting more, to be honest. We spoke to one of the main organizers on Monday as the DNC was kicking off, and he said he hoped to see tens of thousands over the course of the week, but thousands on that first day. We saw what the police said were 2,500 on the first day, and we have not seen, you know, clashes anywhere near what happened in 1968. In fact, the police superintendent here has said he doesn't want that comparison at all. But there have been tensions that have been heightened, and you know, there have been arrests. Yesterday, there was another pro-Palestinian rally that came through here, marched through here in front of the United Center, which is, of course, where delegates have been meeting in the evening. But it was peaceful and no arrests were made last night. Now, that's in contrast to what we saw earlier in the week. Chicago police said that they had arrested 56 people. Was Tuesday night in front of the Israeli consulate when they were protesting there. That was an unpermitted protest. On Monday night, police said they arrested 13 people who breached the barricade here. Vlad.
All right, Roxana Saberi, always great to have you, Roxana. Thanks so much for your reporting. We appreciate you.
You bet.
The parents of a 23-year-old American hostage still held by Hamas in Gaza gave an emotional speech at the DNC last night, pleading for their son and the dozens of others to be released. Listen.
Among the hostages are 8 American citizens. One of those Americans is our only son. His name is Hirsch. Hirsch, if you can hear us, we love you. Stay strong. Survive.
Wow. Well, this all comes, of course, as negotiations are continuing in Cairo today to try and secure a ceasefire and hostage deal between Israel and Hamas. During a phone call yesterday, President Biden pressed Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu on an urgency to get a deal done. CBS News foreign correspondent Ramy Inocencio joins me now. So, Ramy, you heard that emotional speech by the parents of the hostage, the American hostage still being held by Hamas. Israelis, we've been talking about this for months now. Israelis are pressing Benjamin Netanyahu to get a deal done. Where do those ceasefire talks stand at the moment?
Sure, Vlad. Yeah, and we got guidance from the White House, actually, that talks were supposed to start today, but it's just past 5:30 p.m. here local time, and so far there's been no word that that's happened. One local Israeli news outlet did report, though, that that may now start either Saturday or Sunday to finally at least put some kind of pause, if not an end, on this 10.5-month war. We've also learned that Secretary of State Antony Blinken spoke with the Emir of Qatar. A lot of phone calls going on here. Qatar, of course, being one of the mediating countries. Blinken seemingly wanted to stress that the so-called bridging proposal that the U.S. has worked on does address areas of disagreement between both Israel and Hamas. But these sticking points between the two of them, Israel has rejected Hamas's demands for a total ceasefire and also giving up control of Gaza's border with Egypt. And, you know, bringing this to the regional level, Vlad, if ceasefire talks fail, that then could trigger Iran and Hezbollah to retaliate against Israel after 2 assassinations 3 weeks ago. An Israeli expert on Iran who used to work for Israel's spy agency, the Mossad, says actually Iran's proxy Hezbollah is the one to be more worried about. Take a listen.
Hezbollah is close to our borders. It's not Iran, 1,600 kilometers from Israel. It's completely different. The military estimate is around 150,000 rockets and missiles. They have precise missiles. They have a lot of UAVs. This could be a devastating attack on Israel. No.
And the U.S.'s defense of Israel was the focus when President Biden spoke with Prime Minister Netanyahu last night, as you mentioned, to defend against Iran and against all of its proxies. There are a lot: Hamas, Hezbollah in Lebanon, and the Houthis in Yemen. More warplanes, we know, have come to the region, more ships, a submarine, all in the region now. And we just got word that the USS Abraham Lincoln aircraft carrier strike group with its F-35s just arrived yesterday. So everyone is getting ready, hopefully for ceasefire talks to continue on, but also prepping in case they fail.
Ramy Inocencio with a comprehensive report for us this morning. Ramy, appreciate it, man. Thank you very much. All right, let's bring back CBS News Philadelphia meteorologist Grant Gilmore with another look at the national forecast. Grant, over to you.
All right, Vlad, last we talked, we were talking about how we could see, and this is a big could at this point, but we could see some snow over portions of California, specifically the Sierra Nevada mountain range. You see the swirling cloud cover beginning to move into the northwest this afternoon. That is what we're going to be tracking for a storm system that will eventually be bringing mostly rain, but also gusty conditions to the west. There you see that low pressure system moving inland, really trailing its cold front. But eventually, as it moves in, we're still going to see some really cold air coming behind it. Some places out towards Northern California into Oregon and Washington will be a good 30 degrees colder than normal, but that's where you get up into the higher elevations, up into the mountains. This is Friday night into Saturday morning. Some places could see a light coating, and if it does, this could be potentially the first August snow in at least 20 years. But most of this storm system is just going to be bringing rain. So cooler conditions, some rain on the way through portions of the west and the Pacific Northwest. Still a lot of heat across the southern plains and mostly into Texas. We're talking about record-breaking heat that will at least begin to subside over the next couple of days. But today, excessive heat warnings out through much of central Texas with heat advisories in effect for the majority of the rest of the state. Look at some of these forecast highs that are expected to just shatter some record high temperatures. San Angelo up at 110 this afternoon, breaking the record high temperature by 5 degrees. San Antonio 108. The daily record is 103 degrees. Austin at 106. The daily record at 103 degrees. Lubbock at 106. And I mean, look, the record high temperature is 100 degrees. This is some of the hottest air, some of the hottest temperatures that Texas has seen all season. Now we're getting into late August, so eventually things have to break, but not anytime soon. Looking at those daily forecast highs, still in the upper 90s to near triple digits as we head into the weekend. Vlad, I know you'd prefer the heat, but I think some places over on the West Coast might actually be looking forward to a little bit of snow. I don't know, but either way, this is what we've got.
I'll just say, for all those Texans who are seeing that heat and that hot air that you mentioned, they've not experienced hot air like being stuck in a room with me talking about Star Wars. So as bad as it is there, they should count their lucky stars that they're not here with me in this studio talking about Star Wars. Grant, we'll check in with you.
I feel you, man, 100%.
I'll check in with you a little bit later, brother. Thank you.
All right, man.
All right. Ukrainian troops are reportedly preparing for another possible attack as Russia tries to push back those troops in the Kursk region. We're going to take you there for the latest. You're streaming CBS News 24/7. Russian claims its forces stopped Ukrainian troops from breaching their western border about 150 miles from the site of Kyiv's incursion into the Kursk region. Moscow claims its troops advanced into eastern Ukraine. However, a senior commander warned Ukrainian forces were regrouping for another possible attack. Ian Lee has more from the city of Pyratan.
Hi, Vlad. Ukraine is keeping up with the drone attacks deep inside Russia. The latest hit an airbase in the country's southern Volgograd region. Plumes of black smoke and explosions could be seen coming from it. And the governor of the region didn't say what facility had been hit, but that there were no casualties. Drones have completely changed the nature of warfare. Both sides are looking for an advantage. We met with one drone unit from the 117 Territorial Defense Brigade, and they showed us how they arm and operate a drone that costs roughly $400. And what's remarkable is how that simple weapon can take out a multi-million-dollar piece of armor. Their mission now is to support operations in the Kursk region, and they play a critical role. When we spoke to a commander who's been fighting on the ground, he couldn't speak highly enough about how drones are helping him push forward by taking out targets while also protecting his men. Counter-drone warfare has also changed, and that's been a struggle for both sides. What I found interesting is no matter who has the upper hand, Ukraine or Russia, China is the big winner. Both Kyiv and Moscow not only get their drones from there, but also source the means to counter and jam them. The fear that China could someday cut Ukraine off has fueled efforts by Kyiv to develop and mass produce their own cheap drones. Vlad?
All right, Ian, thank you very much. As the election gets closer, there is growing doubt and distrust among some voters in the electoral process. Coming up, how election workers are trying to combat the skepticism. You're streaming CBS News 24/7. There are just over 70 days until the presidential election, and some doubts about the electoral process are growing louder. One Republican election clerk in Michigan is convincing his party members to trust the process. But as CBS News' Adriana Diaz reports, it's an uphill battle.
Late summer on the eastern shore of Lake Michigan is a slice of serenity.
Unless you're discussing elections, then forget about smooth sailing.
We have to beat a corrupt voting system.
Residents are sounding off at a commission meeting about voting in Ottawa County.
There has just been much distrust sown into the system.
Do you solemnly swear that you will support the Constitution of the United States?
Justin Roebuck, the Republican who runs elections here, is no stranger to the skepticism.
Do people still think in this area that the 2020 election was stolen?
We talk to people who do still have really serious concerns and who are not really trusting the process.
That distrust was on display during local elections 2 weeks ago.
Do you have complete trust in elections here?
Eyebrow raise.
Sure, yeah. Even though the officials say that the election was not rigged, that there wasn't widespread fraud?
It's hard to trust sometimes.
These are the people who Roebuck is trying to convince that the data doesn't lie.
We conduct post-election audits where we have a 100% accuracy rate on the equipment itself. So that is a really great thing to be able to talk about.
100%?
It's a 100% accuracy rate.
Not 99?
It's not even 99.
It's really hard to do a job where you know you're doing everything right and be attacked.
It's a distrust that helped push former township clerk Teresa DeGraff to retire.
Everyone that works those are your friends, your family, your neighbors. And do you really believe that all those folks would try to cheat you?
Republicans are half as likely as Democrats to say they're very confident in the accuracy of the state's election system.
That's according to a new CBS News poll, which also found 32% of Republicans were not confident in their state's voting system, as opposed to only 8% of Democrats.
The radical left Democrats rigged the presidential election.
So far this year, former President Trump has said the election system is rigged more than 140 times, despite dozens of audits and lawsuits that found no fraud in 2020.
If we cannot trust the way that we choose our government, we are in a bad situation as a country.
That's why this Republican is working on restoring that trust.
Please feel free to come out. We're here from 9 to 10:30 this morning.
With demonstrations on how voting machines work.
We are essentially testing the accuracy of this equipment.
And confronting officials who allege fraud.
It has been proven ballots are coming in from outside sources that are not from voters.
We have not seen any evidence at all.
With the presidential election just months away, clerks like Roebuck.
You know, we live in this community too. We shop here, our kids go to school here, we go to church together, and we need to be able to build those bridges.
Are trying to rebuild that trust one voter at a time. For Eye on America, Adriana Diaz, Ottawa County, Michigan.
All right, here's one for the birds. According to Deadline, Chick-fil-A is cooking up a new kind of recipe. Its own streaming service. Yeah, you don't think you have enough chicken content in your life? Well, the popular fast food chain is allegedly working with a major production company or companies to create family-friendly shows. Family-friendly shows. Deadline says the company plans to launch it later this year. No word yet on if its star mascot cow will make an appearance in the show. Just stick with us. You're the only streaming content you need in your life. You can eat Chick-fil-A. You can watch us. That's the way I would do it. What do you guys think? All right. All right. Did not want to do this story, but apparently everybody's talking about it because, first of all, it's August. But there are some marketing people out there, Don Draper types, who think that it's not too soon to talk about pumpkin spice season. Pumpkin spice season. Some think it's never too early for this fall flavor, including, who do you think? Starbucks. They're debuting its fall menu today. Earlier in the year, before the company says its fall lineup marks the unofficial start of the fall season. But of course, the actual season doesn't begin for another full month on September 22nd. You're the product, people. You're the product, Grant. Let's go to Grant, Philadelphia meteorologist. Grant, you're the product.
We wait so long for summer and we just want to throw it away? I mean, come
exactly.
on. We're still very much in the summer season across the southern plains into Texas, but like what we talked about earlier, maybe it's time for the PSL out west. Getting into some pretty chilly air, first taste of fall, some places in the Sierras, Vlad, like we said, could get some snow this weekend, so maybe the timing is perfect.
All right. I'll say no thanks, but thank you, Grant, as always, my brother. Appreciate you. All right, an encore of CBS Mornings is coming up next. We'll see you tomorrow.